The Queen learned to ice skate right here in this room. Now, this is not a beginning of a joke. It is actually true. In 1923, when the Great Room opened, a young Princess Elizabeth, aged just 7 years old, learned to skate exactly where we're all sitting today. Now, sadly for her, just 6 years later, the Great Room ice rink was forced to close. And it was forced to close because of other cheaper venues around the city. It was probably the first time that an ice rink had been disrupted by other business models. And the machinery still exists. That original machinery still exists, and it's under all of where you're sitting right now. Now, fast forward 40 years later, and this room saw the unveiling of the Ford Cortina. And it was the latest innovation from the amazing company Ford. And I think the genius of Henry Ford was that he was able to take a new technology, that of the assembly line, and couple it together with that of the motor car and present to the world the affordable car. And what we saw then was basically disruption. It was goodbye horse and carriage and hello motor car. And really, it's the archetypal story of disruption and innovation. So what we now know is that disruption isn't new. But what is new is the rate and the scale at which we're seeing it today. And in the past, we used to see that disruption would happen maybe once in a generation or once maybe in a decade or so. Now it's changed. Now we're seeing it happening every single day. And we're seeing it happening across every single vertical and to every single one of the businesses in this room. Doesn't matter whether you're in health or entertainment, technology, telcos, it's happening to all of us. Just think about it. 10 years ago, Netflix hadn't started to stream. Uber wasn't a verb, and Steve Jobs hadn't given us the iPhone yet. And for us at Facebook, we've had a front row seat to seeing this unprecedented change. And we've seen what it's like to be disrupted and also to disrupt. And for us, it's important to recognize, really, that what happens with disruption, for us also comes responsibility. And there's been a lot of commentary lately about fake news and the internet. Some of you might have picked that up. Although we estimate that the amount of fake news on Facebook is actually incredibly small. But what I want you to know is that we take misinformation very seriously. Because our goal is to connect people to the stories that they find meaningful. And we know that people want accurate information. Mark's acknowledged this, Mark's talked about this, and Mark has said that this has been something that we've been working on for some time and that we're going to continue to do so. And so we're exploring new ways to make sure that we can have stronger detection, to make reporting easier, and also to work with third parties who can help us catch misinformation quicker. But it's going to be our culture that's really going to help us be able to do this. We're the first listed company to be run by a millennial. And so our culture reflects what it's like to be a millennial today. It's open, it's connected, it's collaborative, it's very transparent, and it's flexible, and it's full of opportunity. And I think what that gives us is a unique vantage point, and I'd like to share a little bit about that, what that means to us. Firstly, and the Prime Minister's already said it this morning, the UK is definitely one of the very best places to be a technology company. But Silicon Valley does remain the home of tech. But the biggest names, some of the biggest names in tech are located here. Companies like Shazam, Skype, and also King. And a third of the European unicorns, companies with market caps over $1 billion, choose to have their headquarters here. And we've seen that the digital economy now accounts for 10% of UK GDP, and that is a bigger percentage than any other of the G20 countries. So there is, without question and without doubt, tech in the UK is a British success story, and we should be proud of it. And Facebook has also been part of this success. We came here back in 2007, and with just a handful of people, and we've continued to invest and to grow. And the stories are told from that time that our head of sales then used to literally sleep on the sofa in the office. So late were his conversations with the engineers in California. Now, I'm happy to say now that today we have 1,000 people working in our offices in London, and we do manage to get some sleep. But we're going to continue to invest. And I'm delighted, as the Prime Minister acknowledged, that we're going to increase our headcount by 50%, and that is what we're planning to do in the next year, so that we will have 1,500 people here in the UK. And so if you're looking for a job, we're hiring. Now, success for tech in the UK, and London in particular, has been impressive, and it has been far-reaching. But it's not random, it wasn't inevitable, it was a very deliberate choice. And the PM spoke earlier about the hard choices that are facing now our country. And much ink has been spilt on Brexit, and truly none of us yet know how this is going to play out. But what we need to keep on doing is we need to keep on doing the things that made the UK such an incredible innovator and tech community. And it's important to make sure that if we don't do this, we do risk being overtaken or even left behind. Now, in my role in EMEA, covering a really diverse region from Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, I get to travel to a different city every single week. And when I look around the world and I see cities like Berlin and Tel Aviv, they're really competing to be the best innovators and also to attract both the best talent and the best investment. So we need to keep pace. We need to have new ideas, and we need to make sure that we continue to look outwards and not inwards. We need to stay competitive, and we need to remain a welcome home to tech. Now, the businesses that benefit will not just be all the businesses in this room, but also the hundreds and thousands of small and medium businesses up and down our country. And they really are the backbone of the UK economy. And when I think about small businesses, I think about them as some of the best innovators that I see anywhere in the world. And why is that? That's because they know how to cope with disruption. They know how to work with increased agility. They know that they have the ability, because they have to have the ability, to move fast and to be able to pivot. And so really, they are the ideal candidates to embrace disruption. And they are a powerful engine of growth for our economy. But to support them, we need to know them and we need to understand them better. And that's why I was delighted that in September, Facebook was able to partner with both the World Bank and the OECD on a new ongoing report called The Future of Business. This is the very first time that we will be able to have a monthly snapshot to be able to understand business sentiment. It gives us a real insight into the people that are running these businesses, really to help us understand better the challenges that they face, and that together we'll be able to create new opportunities for them to help them navigate the disruptive world and to help them to grow. But what about the people in this room that perhaps don't have the advantage of being small? How do we respond? How do we disrupt the new norm that we see out there? How do we allow the disruptors to force us to move faster, to think differently about how we run our businesses? Disruptors should inspire us. Disruptors should change our products. And disruptors should encourage us to think about innovation in a new way. But I also have to acknowledge that that path is not always an easy path, because every disruptor requires a disrupted. So you have to be both humble and vigilant. Now, hands up in the room who's ever visited our headquarters in Menlo Park. Hands up. Come on, there's a few more of you than that. I can see David. Why is your hand not up? Martin, why is your hand not up? You've been a few times. So when you know that when you arrive at our headquarters, for those that haven't been there, you see a great big sign of the Facebook thumb like. Do you remember that? The ones that have been, you've seen that. What you might not have seen is that on the back of the sign, covered in leaves, is a sign for Sun Microsystems, the company that used to occupy our campus. Now, Sun, as you'll recall, back in the 80s and 90s, was one of the pioneers of the computer industry, pioneers in hardware and software. And at the time, they were turning over, they had sales of $10 billion a year and a stock price of $250 a share. And just a handful of years later, they were then reduced down to 98% of their value. And that dusty sign really is a daily reminder for all of us that even the most powerful and seemingly indestructible companies are not immune to disruption. But it's not just companies that make mistakes or maybe are complacent that can be affected by disruption. I recall that when Nokia was acquired by Microsoft, the then CEO said, and I quote, "We didn't do anything wrong, but somehow we lost." And so as incumbents, the only way really, in order to avoid being disruptive, is to disrupt ourselves. And that requires thinking and behaving like a disruptor. And so we have to renew ourselves every month, every year, or we risk being like the ice rink under the floor. Now, there's a neon sign at Facebook. It looks like something that you might see sort of in an 80s cocktail bar, and it says lockdown. And lockdown is something that we switch on when we see a transformative new trend emerging or a shift in the way that people are using technology. And when we switch it on, what we do is we move significant amounts of engineering resource to focus on a specific goal and to really ruthlessly prioritize where we're going to take the company. We divert energies, and whatever we do, we're focusing to make sure that we solve the challenge and get us over the line. Do you know this is not an easy thing to do? Just think about how you move all that talent. But we do whatever we need to do in order to make it necessary. And one of the examples when lockdown was turned on was when Mark saw the shift to mobile and saw that we needed to be a mobile-first and a mobile-best company. And so he turned to the engineers at the company and he said, "Don't come into me, show me and code for me mobile-first products." Now that was back in 2012, and at that time we had 0% of our revenues coming from mobile. Today, just 4 years later, over 80% of our revenues are coming from mobile. And we activated lockdown again earlier this year. We saw the shift to video happening, this huge shift to video happening, and then we wanted to really place a bet and move priorities and resources onto live as well. And I'm pleased to say that that worked. And today on Facebook, we're seeing 100 million hours of video being watched every single day. So lockdown's probably not going to be right for everyone, but the point is that when we see opportunities, we pivot the company. And I think businesses need to seize those opportunities and really embrace disruption. Because it's not a once in a decade, it's not a once in a generation moment. For the modern business, this is an everyday requirement. And it's also not about just being a technological ability. It needs to also be a cultural mindset and mind shift as well. And company culture is an incredibly important thing that many of us are talking about today. And there was some recent research done with Deloitte where they talked to all of you, C-suite level people, to find out what matters most when it comes to culture and what matters most when it comes to disruption. And yes, culture was absolutely acknowledged as being one of the key things, but also so was internal communications, because it's critically important to make sure that we can move our organizations quickly and have the ability to realize ways in which we can bring our missions and our visions to life. And I couldn't agree more with that. Because the Facebook culture is not a kind of nice to have something, it really does reflect our mission to be open and connected. Because we believe that an open and connected company and an open and connected world will be a better world. People with more information make better decisions, and they have greater impact. And that also goes for how we run our company as well. Everybody at Facebook has access to huge amounts of information. And the reason that we do that is because we think that if people are better informed, then they'll feel more empowered to go on and make better decisions. And that, in turn, will lead to greater impact. Now, one of the things that we have at Facebook, and we've had it since the company was started about 12 years ago, is we do a weekly Q&A with Mark every single Friday. Friday at 5 o'clock, Mark does a weekly Q&A. And you can literally ask Mark a question on anything. Now, some of my favorite questions are when he gets asked things about, how his dog's getting on with his new baby Max. But of course, there's a lot of serious questions about, the future of the company or maybe why we made some acquisition. There was one pretty telling story a few years back when an intern that was attending the Q&A asked Mark and made the comment that he didn't think Mark was very good at public speaking. Now just imagine that. Just imagine an intern going up to the CEO of a global company and giving feedback to the CEO. Could that happen in your company? Would that happen in your company? Now, what Mark did then, I think, was pretty telling, because Mark literally there and then hired that intern. He hired him right on the spot. And the reason he did that, because he wanted to show that this was a company that was willing to take feedback, sometimes hard, but also, more importantly, that it was a company that was willing to be able to have truth spoken to power. And I think it's typical of the culture when it's modeled from the CEO down. And so for us, that openness is really part of our mission, but it's also critical for our success as a business. And so we talk about it constantly. And we have hundreds and hundreds of examples of how you can see this openness and what it means to us as a business, and how I think it's making us more resilient as a business in the face of all of this disruption. I'm going to share just one story that I think really speaks so beautifully about the power of culture, and it concerns Safety Check. So I think most of you know what Safety Check is, but Safety Check is one of our products that we can activate at a time of a natural disaster or a major incident, and it allows people to notify the friends and the family, the people that they love, that they're safe. But it was actually inspired and developed by two developers in light of the Boston Marathon bombings and also the Japanese tsunami. They came together and they asked that this issue could be discussed at a hack. Now, for the uninitiated, a hack is an all-night coding session where our engineers get together and with other people from around the company, and they set out to kind of really challenge each other and look to build a new product together. The like button was born from a hack, and so too was the Safety Check feature. And what I love about this story is this was a couple of people that came together, as well as other people that said, I want to just make this situation better. I want to find a way to make this happen. And I think it was our culture of openness and our culture of giving, and that space in the culture of that nothing at Facebook is somebody else's problem, gave you the license to do it. After all, the old saying goes that if you want to build a ship, don't give people tasks to go out and get wood. Don't assign them tasks. Teach them to dream and to yearn for the vast and endless sea. Culture can be very potent, and it's definitely worth getting right. And as businesses change, the way that people work is also changing too. We have an expression in Facebook about eating your own dog food. Now, it's not really the tastiest of images, but what it means is that we are literally using our own products. And at Facebook, we've been using our own product to help us build our own company. So we use the newsfeed, we use groups, we use messages to communicate with one another. And what we find is that it helps the collaboration across the company with people in different offices and people in different time zones. And so just last month, we launched Workplace. And that really is a platform for collaboration and communications for businesses. To date, we've had over 1,000 businesses that have signed up to it, only launched a month ago, and we've seen businesses like RBS, Danone, and Oxfam coming onto Workplace and seeing how they can really communicate with each other in different ways. What I'm absolutely thrilled about is that Workplace is built, created, manufactured, designed, and sold right here out of London. And it's actually our first global product to be built outside of our headquarters. So where does all this leave us? With this huge backdrop of seismic shifts in policies and politics and demographics and the economy, we definitely are living in an unprecedented world of disruption and change. But I think we're only 1% done. I just think that disruption is only just beginning, and it's only just beginning to get its skates on. Today on the planet, there are 4 billion people that do not have any access to the internet. And they are offline for just one reason, and that is that connectivity is really expensive. And it's going to take decades in order to bring them all online, to take for granted the thing that we all have access to. And at Facebook, that's just not good enough for us. We're not satisfied with where that is. Because what we see in the importance of connectivity is it can give people a voice. We think it can create opportunities. Just imagine. Imagine what it's like to be able to get access to a weather forecast if you're a person that's tending and growing crops. Imagine what it's like to be able to give an encyclopedia of knowledge to a child that doesn't have access to any textbooks. And then just imagine the disruptions that are going to occur when we have voice given to the entrepreneurs and innovators all around the world. I think that that is an incredibly exciting proposition. So our 10-year mission, the mission that Mark has set out, it really is about how we bring the rest of the world online. And we're going to do this through our Connectivity Lab, which looks at all range of different technologies and innovations to really address this issue. It's about embracing satellites, it's about embracing new infrastructure or aircraft that can bring and drive acceleration of connectivity to the underserved and the unserved. And so we're going to have things like these solar-powered planes that are built right here in the UK at our high-tech design facility in Somerset. So Aquila can literally fly at twice the height of Boeing 737s, twice the height of commercial aircraft, and it can beam connectivity down in 50-kilometer areas to places like sub-Saharan Africa and to India. And we just recently had our first test flights. So it has the wingspan of a 737 plane, but actually only weighs a third of amount of a small electric car. So if we thought that disruption was fast and furious now, can you imagine what it's going to be like when we unlock the potential of the entrepreneurs and innovators from across every continent and connect them to each other and to all of us in the rest of the world? Now that's a disruption that we are counting on. And it's not always going to be a smooth flight, but we've already left the runway. Thank you.
Thank you. Brilliant. A huge